Hey, welcome everybody to the video podcast series with Salesforce and ketteQ. This is the first of many that we have planned, and we're going to set the bar high today because with me is Tony Kratovil, and Tony is the GM and leader of the Manufacturing Cloud product line, which obviously is really important to the relationship between Salesforce and ketteQ. So nice to see you today, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and thank you for inviting me on the podcast here.
Yeah, thanks. I look forward to the conversation. And, one of the things that we talked about a little before in preparation for this was how much is changing in today's business and technology and even world. I just a quick story. My dad was a high school math teacher, and he had the calculator for the school because he was a chairman of the math department. And people would come borrow that calculator to calculate average test scores. And that was the amount of change they had to manage back then. Now, they still had change, but you can imagine one generation later, the technology and the business climate that everyone has to walk through. So whether it's a personal or business, change is certainly constant.
Yeah, that's for sure, and it's in fact it's accelerating almost exponentially. I mean, if you think about like a year ago at this time, we weren't even really talking yet about Gen AI or just starting that process, and now it's kind of all we talk about. It feels like right in the IT world. So,
right, that's right. And so when you start to think about that from an IT perspective and supply chain world that we both serve and have a passion and expertise around, we see a number of things from the performance of that supply chain, companies being more and more reliant on that. We see that especially in the last few years to grow revenue and profit. And then a number of, and the impact of the speed of disruptions is higher than ever. And the talent shortage to implement, maintain, and run the complex systems of supply chain planning today is more challenging than ever. But at the same time, the good news is cloud computing and new technology, like you just mentioned, is becoming more and more available and applied across a lot of things, including supply chain. I know you're seeing that there at Salesforce and the customers you're serving as well.
Yeah, I think the timing is good as well. We're a member of the National Association of Manufacturers, and I've always followed their quarterly surveys that come out. I mean, the one thing that's been consistent on that for literally the past 6 or 7 years is this just kind of challenge ahead of us on labor, and it's not workers. It's really across the whole spectrum. Top number one concern of manufacturing CEOs. The reality is, I mean, we're not producing enough engineers, we're not producing enough technicians in the field to meet the demand that's coming ahead of us. And at the end of the day, some of these new technologies, like I said, they've come at a great time because I think that is the reality. We're not going to find all these people, right? And it's less about job replacement. It's really about augmenting the existing workforce, right, to making them more effective and productive.
Yeah. It is an interesting dilemma with all these coming together, that first three, and maybe the saving answer is the technology. It seems that it has been over time, but it is coming just at the right time. And, we see AI and machine learning all around us as consumers now. And I have to believe that that's made available and possible because of the cloud computing, that infinite computing power that now the world can tap into is fundamental and really required to drive the big engines of AI and machine learning. So all of that is being enabled and coming together, and we just have to figure out how to use it as solution providers together.
Yeah, use it, and like as you said, it is a huge opportunity because the reality is no one company could afford to do this. Cloud computing really has changed the calculus there, and it's also leveled the playing field in some ways, right? You see that this technology is available really to everyone, whether you're a small company, a mid-sized company, or a Fortune 500 manufacturer.
That's right. Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's this will probably serve better the smaller companies that really have a hard time. The bigger companies have the resources to find and train and retain the top talent, but the smaller companies don't have those advantages. So they probably have more to gain the mid-market than the enterprise even.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it is a journey, and that's one of the reasons why we founded ketteQ with the Salesforce platform Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, bringing sales and operations together and really transforming how companies run with a more efficient and higher performing supply chain. But the real value behind that is Salesforce is a platform for journey makers. And we've seen that in the evolution of Salesforce as a company, from being a sales tool to CRM to all the apps you provide to now thousands of ISVs like ketteQ. It's endless in the kinds of journeys that you can take a company end to end down, all on the same platform. So it's exciting to see this being a big part of Salesforce future as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tension in the market and the rapid pace of change really, frankly, Salesforce as a company has benefited from that.
Mm-hmm.
We've moved from this world where, 30 years ago, when I remember being involved in ERP implementations, that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
everything was so project focused, right? And these were big, complex projects. You get through, all the design work, all the implementation work, you're planting your flag finally when you're done on the thing. And then everyone would kind of like, hey, let's kind of move on and get past that and get back to our day jobs. That's not really there anymore in the world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things are just way too fluid. You can't have these static Manhattan, style projects where you're spending tons of resources and to a big end game that may or may not be successful. That's where I think it's really benefited Salesforce as a company, this idea of putting a platform that's very nimble, where you can move quickly, you can try things, you can react to the market. Not all these things work, right? We've been all of us been in IT a long time. There's a lot of failed IT projects out there.
Right.
So the reality is you want to be able to pivot, though. You want to test it. If it doesn't work, move quickly. And that's the idea of the platform. And the exciting thing is making this accessible to manufacturers, to companies like ketteQ that can go out and take advantage of this flexibility.
Yeah. It is being flexible and nimble. I think those are key words. And just thinking about the fact that your whole training platform is for trailblazers in a lot of ways. When you're blazing a trail, you don't have a map necessarily. So you're kind of figuring it out as you go. And all companies, particularly leading companies, have to do that because they're going someplace in a new way that they may not have seen before, and so have to figure that out.
Right.
And so when I think about the journey in supply chain, I look all the way back to the 80s. So before we can look forward, maybe we look backwards, all the way back to the 80s. And when, the I2 coined the term supply chain, and SAP and Logility and others were fast followers, and they delivered the first planning systems not too long ago, but about 40 years ago, by building some new technology and driving a supply plan and a demand plan. And but the problem was it took hours to run those. And so the breakthrough of technology had to happen to be able to run concurrent planning and run scenarios and move from hours to run a supply plan to minutes. And then a host of companies started over. You couldn't just take that. So it required a breakthrough in technology. And 20 years ago, that was in-memory database. And so folks like Kinaxis in 2009, they did a great job of building something brand new that broke the paradigm of running a supply in hours and took it to minutes. And so now you can run concurrent planning and run a scenario. But it's reliant on the talent that people are having a hard time finding to implement, maintain, and use those systems. And so we're looking for another paradigm to be able to take the journey down the road to autonomous planning. And that's exciting because it takes another technology breakthrough. But more importantly, when you get there, you can find the optimal plan, not just one that the configuration from the architect or the intuition from the user found, but the optimal as you search for all the scenarios that might drive the best combination of results, and then test those winning scenarios with variability of lead time and demand to get a probability and some confidence and make probabilistic decisions. But then with the machine learning and AI, we'll talk about more in a minute, though that then gets you all the way down the road where some really interesting things can happen in companies. And we see businesses already now making this transition to get on the next era of supply chain planning and moving down this path. And I know from a manufacturing cloud and Salesforce, there's a lot of things that you all offer as enablers on this journey as well. Do you have any thoughts as far as what you see where we're at right now in this journey and then what's to come?
Yeah, and this area here too of the detailed algorithms, calculations, all that stuff, that's clearly like ketteQ's domain expertise, and you're obviously taking advantage of the Salesforce platform.
Mm-hmm.
The role that we want to play from a product standpoint at
Mm-hmm.
Salesforce is to leverage these advanced data sets, information that you're calculating, and expose it to kind of the broad community that's out there. I think the challenge I've always seen in manufacturing companies with supply chain planning tools is they tended to be kind of locked away in the planning community.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, they are complex. Not everyone may have the skills to interpret the data or to adjust the algorithms or to really even manage these tools. But if you could take outputs of these systems, these data sets, and make them accessible to your pricing and your pricing experts, to all your customer community, right? That's having conversations in the field about, okay, hey, this is what we're forecasting. Give me some feedback on it. That collaboration, that kind of loose communications, if you can get that captured and provide input back into the planning process, I really think that's the role that we can play.
No doubt. I mean, when you take that center of excellence and you kind of change the paradigm, and then everyone who's involved in supply chain, which is not just the planners, when you think from suppliers to customers, there's many people, and a lot of those people are already on the Salesforce platform. I know you have customers with tens and even hundreds of thousands of users. And so they're doing all kinds of things. And some of those things they do impact the supply chain. And so extending the participation in a thoughtful way with autonomous planning doesn't add work, but gets everyone aligned. And that's the power of Salesforce, to be able to provide that kind of reach and scale.
Yeah, and I think still that most companies haven't extended this outside the four walls of their organization as well. I mean, I think that's a huge opportunity for many companies, is to make your channel partners, your contractors, your dealers, distributors, and customers part of the planning process, right? Just bring them closer, and I think that there's some real opportunities there.
Yeah. It's really exciting to see that vision. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but it's all there for the leading companies to start moving down this path and take advantage of the kind of vision that we're talking about. It's not that far from reality, I think, and we'll see it unfold pretty quickly with some companies. But it does require a new technology approach. And I mentioned this earlier about the technology paradigm breakthroughs that we've seen in the last 20 years and 40 years. Well, so now to be able to enable that kind of a path, really takes advantage of the cloud computing, that horizontal scalability. You can't have the monolithic approach in terms of how the analytics runs and how the scenarios are run too. Has to break those scenarios down vertically and horizontally, have multiple CPUs. If you don't do that, it doesn't matter how much CPU capacity you throw at it, it's still going to run in the same amount of time. So you have to start over, just like the other companies did to usher in the last eras, and to take full advantage of that cloud computing, and then be able to run these scenarios now in fractions of a second, add a genetic algorithm to run the tests, to test the variability and uncertainty, and bring all that together, and then expose it, like we talked about, through the systems that people are already accessing and the processes that they're already do. So everyone's aligned to what that engine can really produce down to every decision or the big strategic ones as well. So that new paradigm, and I know, when you think about Salesforce and the reach and the scale that it has, any thoughts in terms of the technology that you guys are harnessing there as part of this journey?
I think, fundamentally, Salesforce at its core is a platform, and of course we build applications on it. ketteQ, other ISVs build applications on it as well. But having that common platform layer is really important. I don't think a lot of people fully internalize, but there's only one version of Salesforce that's out there. And I think that's still kind of unique in the industry. We're not a containerized cloud application where everyone's still maintaining their upgrade cycles and so forth. We push out 3 upgrades a year. Everyone's on the same technology, whether you're again, Fortune 500 manufacturer or machine shop, right? You get access to the same technology at the same time. The other thing about that, though, is that it's allowed us to continually provide innovations at the platform level. We recently introduced Data Cloud last year, for instance. It fundamentally changed the idea of data management. Salesforce traditionally was a very transactional application platform. Now we have the ability to visualize hyperscaler-like data sets inside of that same framework. And again, take advantage of all the capabilities of that platform. Generative AI is another area. So now we got this platform, we're populating with the information, with data, we're capturing all the processes, we're capturing the design of the application itself in a metadata format. All that's available to these generative AI tools now as we move forward to really fundamentally change how the system operates. I think in the planning world, there's a really powerful opportunity around generating synthetic data sets. We all know that planning systems are so reliant on accurate data at the fundamental level.
Yeah.
It is probably the toughest thing to achieve, right? Is hyper accurate. But using generative AI to fill in the gaps in data sets, I think is something that's kind of untapped in this space. Really kind of cool things that we're looking forward to there.
Yeah. That's pretty neat. You're right. Data is lots of time the long pole in the tent to jive these engines and the processes. And there's a way to contribute, like you're saying. You talked about Salesforce innovating, but the kinds of decisions that you all made a long time ago enables the innovation you're talking about. But think about the thousands of innovators like ketteQ that are out there answering all kinds of use cases across a wide spectrum of industries and business functions. It's phenomenal that you were really ahead of your time in terms of cloud architecture with that kind of enablement for such a wide range of capabilities. I've walked into a lot of VPs or IT or CIOs, and I've heard them say, look, in one case, I remember just a few years ago, we have 242 vendors, software vendors, and I need to consolidate. And I'm looking at, in their case, their ERP system, I said SAP and Salesforce. And so people see Salesforce as just a great marketplace and platform to deliver a lot of capabilities in a very thoughtful way on a single platform. So it's so that autonomous planning, Salesforce has a big enabler for that. And when we look at those the value that we enable together, we call them 5 pillars of value of autonomous planning, and Salesforce contributes to really all of them. Is that uncertainty management, where you're testing the scenarios for confidence and probabilities. Everything today is handling and managing uncertainties so that you can make the right decision, but understand the risks and the reward and the confidence you have of those decisions. And then that extends then into exactly what we were talking about earlier, extended participation, where it's the users, not just a center of excellence where everyone has to go to provide input and get information, but really making it available for everyone in a simple and natural way, so that center of excellence idea kind of goes away, and it's a distribution of excellence to where the point is important and needed, so that the input, the information, and the insights is a natural flow both ways. And that's a key element for Salesforce. Before I jump onto the other 3, though, I'll see if you have any comments about these 2, uncertainty management and extended participation, leveraging the Salesforce platform.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of the 1-2. It's the joint value prop of ketteQ Salesforce. I mean, I think you clearly have the expertise in that uncertainty management and scenario planning and all that. But leveraging that platform again to expand that participation in the process itself. And again, it's internal users, it's sales, marketing. A lot of companies extend this well beyond that. Internally, but then also the external participation. If you can really pull your value chain closer to you, providing guidance, insight onto those calculated values, I think that's really kind of the holy grail of supply chain planning here.
Yeah, for sure. And then it goes into extended collaborative execution. So some of the things, the use cases and processes we're talking about, really on the execution side. But as we know, the line between planning and execution is really becoming more and more blurry when people have to make decisions much more quickly, as things change more quickly. We talked about at the very start of the conversation. So collaborative execution drives into that. And of course, the technology around Slack and other things that are part of the Salesforce Salesforce platform, huge advantages for that kind of dynamic, real-time, fast-paced execution where everyone's on the same page, and you record those decisions as well for future learning and improvements. And when it comes into the sales organization, the supply chain planning and autonomous planning doesn't have to be just about cost reduction and efficiency. Those things are table stakes nowadays, and everyone's trying to do more with less. But when these advantages and this value and capabilities can be delivered in a thoughtful way into sales, then that's a real powerful advantage to be able to grow revenue. And of course, when the salespeople are already using Salesforce, you can start to bring into the sales pipeline. And we see this when we book a plane ticket or a hotel or buy a ticket to an event. We get a glimpse of the supply chain capacity and others that are competing and looking at that same capacity. 3 tickets left at this price, 4 rooms left at this price. Someone just bought tickets in this section you're interested in 39 minutes ago for $400. So there's a lot of those insights that help me make a decision and kind of motivate me to make a decision. Well, all that can be brought into the sales cycle too, early in the process. If you sell this now, we can promise this date, and the risk of slipping is high, low, medium. Those kinds of things, all the way to market and economic indicators to evaluate how your pipeline's growing, how your sales forecast looks compared to what the market says about the potential. All those revenue multipliers are really powerful for companies, and obviously the footprint and the users that already sit on the Salesforce platform give us a direct line to those kinds of use cases.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually, when we think about 3 and 4, I mean, one of the tenets that we built in Manufacturing Cloud was this idea of tracking performance to the assumptions on contracts.
Yeah.
So we're out negotiating, we're out negotiating pricing agreements with our distribution partners, with distribution partners and customers. There's a volume price relationship there. Salespeople have been doing that for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But I think the disconnect has always been, look, are we thinking about variability of demand? Are we thinking about our ability to support, right? Like the actual capacity in the system. Yeah. Are we taking those trade-offs and putting them into the pricing models as well? Yeah. Huge opportunity there, especially as more and more companies start to look at sales not just as a top line growth mechanism or top line mechanism, but what is the margin at a customer level, territory level, product level, and there's a real opportunity here to mash these things together, right? That's kind of an area that we focused heavily on Manufacturing Cloud, is what is that best price volume relationship, and then how can I track performance against that?
Yeah. When you're describing that, Tony, I think it's not just growing revenue, but shaping revenue so that it meets supply, capacity, and availability. And so you can influence both together. And so a lot of great ways to be able to do that. And then the last one that we have is be able to coordinate the operations. Lots of times we see in distribution, manufacturing, and service, when all of that is part of a company's business model and supply chain, if they're not coordinated, they're competing with each other. And lots of times there's a default setting. You may like this, but our friends at service don't. Manufacturing lots of times gets to jump the line. And because there's no system to say, hey, this constraint supply that's coming in, where's the best place to put it across all the needs, distribution, manufacturing, and service? So doing it on a single platform, even though it's different functions that are running those businesses, and certainly different requirements for understanding demand and prioritization and risk, all that, though, can be brought together because ultimately it's the same suppliers, the same balance sheet of the company. And so how do you best allocate that across all of that is an important pillar as well. I know with Salesforce, you have Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud. So it's more than just Manufacturing Cloud. So you all see that as well in terms of the footprint.
No, and I think that is a big gap. I mean, we saw it in the last 3-4 years with all the supply chain issues in the world. At the end of the day, there were some hard decisions made on what customer is not going to get the product, right, based on capacity constraints and so forth. Having a visibility of, okay, who are my best customers, who is provided the most consistent volume, the volume on time, orders on time. Compared with all the supply chain details now, it really allows you to make those trade-offs in the right way.
Yeah.
So you don't you don't want to short your best customers, right? Or your highest margin customers, and
That's right.
Your underperforming customers, maybe you want to give those to your competitors in some cases, right? So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's one way to shape demand and shape revenue.
Yeah, but it's just how do you make these trade-offs and what's the best decision for the company?
Yeah, for sure. And every business has them every day to make. So there's 5 pillars of value, and a lot of that's enabled with the generative AI. And we see companies today already doing this. We have it in our platform, and because we're open and standard down to the relational database underneath all of that, so we can take that technology and train it on our data model very quickly. And so you don't have to learn a system and know what to do in the system to go query and find information. You can go up and make it as simple. And this is what allows us to democratize the access to what we're talking about is with generative AI, where there's no system, and this box can sit anywhere. It doesn't have to be our screen. It can be a Salesforce screen where companies, a user rather, can go up and say, show me the suppliers with the highest demand variability for components of finished goods greater than margin greater than 40%. So that's table stakes for generative AI, is be able to provide that kind of information with a natural language interface or user experience. And then it goes the other way, though. We want information from them, but we don't want the user to have access to our system and know how to navigate to the right product like solar flashlights or channel like Florida market or month of January, and then go in and add 10%. You just tell us, give us the information, and we'll go put it into the data as if you went to those screens and did that. That changes the game and who can participate. We talked about the second pillar, extended participation. But then advise is where, okay, tell me what you're trying to do, and I'll go help you figure it out. In this case, what should I promote in May of 2024 to drive an additional $4 million of revenue? Well, the system can really look at that in terms of demand variability, readiness of capacity, because you can't bill for what you can't deliver. So that's, again, comes back to your demand shaping example. And so advise is where it gets really interesting to be able to work with a user that's trying to make a real-time decision, leveraging this analytics. And of course, in phase 4, which is where we're going, things get really interesting where it's working for you when you don't even know it. It's looking for trends. In this example, inventories levels are trending higher than your goals. We've run 5 scenarios. We recommend this action plan to be able to mitigate the situation. That's where companies will be. And it won't be too far away from now because the technology is there. It's just a matter of how quickly can they adopt it. But getting on that technology path gives them the opportunity to adopt it as quickly as they're ready to do that. Any comments or thoughts about this vision for how AI will transform supply chain planning?
No, I think it's an amazing vision here. But it also, I think, highlights the importance of having a platform in place, having your data pools in place, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get to phase 4 without those things there, right? As the industry continues to evolve, we'll get to phase 1, phase 2 in the next couple of years here. Phase 3, phase 4, we'll follow after that. But it's still, I think in some ways, Mike, we almost need like a phase 0. Do you have your data?
Yeah. Well, we're at phase 1 and testing phase 2 from a ketteQ perspective.
Yes.
But you bring up a good point, though, is the data has to be ready, has to be reliable and confident. The processes have to be ready to take advantage of it. So there's a lot that has to happen besides the technology being available to take this journey. But so it all happened in parallel.
Yeah, it's one way we talk about this with our customers too, because we're doing the same thing. We're building areas in the phase 1, phase 2 space. But if you put this maybe in the customer lens, how do you think about a project? Start thinking about the data. Start doing it now, right? As you
that's right.
Tools, these technologies, and really be prepared for it.
Yeah, so this is exciting. We see this in a lot of facets of our lives today, generative AI. And then where we work together from a systems perspective, there's a lot of two-way closed loop use cases that are delivered together with Manufacturing Cloud, focused on the customer and the agreements and all the capabilities of Salesforce, even behind Manufacturing Cloud, interacting with ketteQ to get consensus around demand from other sources of how you would think about and forecast and predict demand demand, and then align that with supply and even on the service parts into manufacturing, DC, and transportation. That's the supply planning that ketteQ brings to the table, and all of that works very well together and delivering a lot of value, bringing sales and operations more closely together on that path too. I don't know if you have any comments. I'll jump into the demo and you can add some along the way, or if you have any.
No, I think that this articulates the roles, both Salesforce Manufacturing Cloud and ketteQ play. But yeah, I think the best way to really get into it is to see a demo.
Okay, that sounds great, Tony. I think the demo, like you're saying, will help everything come to life, because all this is available now. And what we'll walk through is essentially 3 use cases that go back and forth between, in a seamless way, the data and the workflow and even the screens between Manufacturing Cloud and ketteQ. The first one is we'll combine forecasts from the two to be able to get a better demand signal. That's statistical as well as workflow. Then we'll look at that demand plan and the consensus building with some collaboration and where people can introduce adjustments into that demand plan from a workflow perspective and an adoption of that demand plan and signal. And then finally, where things get really interesting is where's the supply chain readiness to be able to meet the demand, whether it's an order that's that's in a pipeline or an order that's already booked. And all of that is, we're going to have one example here, but there's a lot of ideas and examples that can be delivered and enabled to grow revenue and customer loyalty. So let me bounce over to the demo now. And I'm going to start with a Manufacturing Cloud screen, advanced forecast, account forecast. And I'll open one to start. And we'll look at this forecast from an account and product perspective. And you can see there's a lot of information, but I'm going to drill into the quantity metrics. And it shows for this customer all the products that are in the account plan. And I can see for each product, for each month, what's the sales agreement plan, what's the opportunity quantity, what's the forecast quantity, lots of different signals and data elements that reflect this product in this sales agreement for this customer. And all of that information is available also with regards to the demand plan, where we're going to look at other information in addition to what the sales agreements offer. And in this case, we're looking at that product by month. And the Manufacturing Cloud data is sitting right here. It's not moving anywhere. It's just accessed from this ketteQ screen. Along with the ketteQ statistical forecasting, we could put market and economic indicators. There's a lot of data elements that can come together in one view for the user to build a statistical forecast that combines the input of everything, as well as the workflow that's needed to be able to allow people to come in and add adjustments to either the Manufacturing Cloud view of forecast or the statistical view of forecast. And either way, workflow is enabled for a combination of users, whichever makes sense, to be able to really kind of update that forecast in a way with user input, both in as far as the demand history or in this example, adjusting the forecast. But the user really didn't even have to come here. Going back to the account forecast, if I look right within this screen, you can see the ketteQ demand planning screen right from here. So it's not that you have to go back and forth between even tabs of solutions. Everything's integrated in from a user and workflow perspective so that everyone sees the view as a natural part of their process. But then it doesn't stop, as I talked about that third scenario. It's how do we bring demand and supply together, and then the place to go next is in replenishment planning. So ketteQ, for this given order, we can see from Acme Partners, this sales order for a trench bucket is the customer is asking for 200 of them and a request date of June 7th. And so with the supply plan, looking at that pipeline, looking at the booked orders, balancing the priorities, considering the constraint supply of capacity for production and material, it right away can say, okay, I can deliver 50 of the 25 of the 200, 25% on a delivery date. But the rest is going to come because it's on hand with July 7th. But the rest is not going to come until June 7th. But the rest is not going to come until July 7th. And so it's going to be a split order some coming as requested, and the rest later. Same with the other product that's on this order. In this case, it's only 10% that can meet the request date. 90% is going to come at a later date, in this example, July 23rd. So all of that is part of the sales process that the salesperson sees as well when they're looking at it through the opportunity record. And it's not just the data that we just saw, but what also is important to the customer salesperson interaction with these two items, these two products that are on the order, is with a request of 250 available to meet the request date, 150 is going to come later. But because we know the supply capacity and the competing demand, looking at that same capacity, we have high confidence. So the risk of slipping is low on that second delivery date of July 1st. Meanwhile, you can see that there's a lot less capacity here, or more demand, or maybe both, because 90% is going to come later beyond the requested date. And so that's not going to come till the 23rd of July, and the risk of slipping is high. And so these are the places where people can then start to interact. Well, let's raise the priority. Let's move the date. Instead of June 7th, what if I didn't get it till June 17th? Can I get 10 or 20 instead of waiting for 45 till later? That interaction from the salesperson and the customer is all available use cases that can be provided within the combination of Manufacturing Cloud and ketteQ. So that's a real quick walkthrough, bouncing between the two in a very seamless way of data, analytics, and workflow. And hopefully it gives some ideas to the attendees of this podcast for what might work in their business and unlock some unique capabilities and value for growing revenue. Any comments though, Tony, about these three use cases and the walkthrough that I just quickly did?
Oh, I think it was a great overview, and it really shows the power of taking this data that, again, kind of a lot of times is locked away in the supply chain planning world, making it accessible to your customer-facing teams. Because just think of that conversation you can have now is, I'm going to commit to this, or here's when we can get it. But there is some risk and slippage. I mean, customers, they understand, right, the complexity in the supply chain. It's out there, but they don't want surprises. So the better that you can have those informed conversations, it improves CSAT. It just makes the whole system work better.
Yeah, that's right. And when you think about data and data integration, it's all right there on the platform. In the traditional ways, okay, let me send this information to sales, and sales does something, and let me send it back to the supply chain planning system. And so there's latency. It doesn't really enable the kind of workflow that we're talking about, where it's, everyone's on the same page and working off the same sheet of music, and really the same data, even common data. So that's a big advantage for these kinds of use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when we think about the summary and maybe some takeaways, that journey to autonomous planning is coming. The leaders are going to jump on this path sooner than the ones that have to try and catch them, and it's going to be a big advantage to the marketplace. And so this is what we see as a next era of significant business opportunities enabled by the next era of supply chain planning. And to capitalize on the opportunities takes a fundamentally different architecture and technology to be able to enable it, just like we talked about it. And then ketteQ and Salesforce Manufacturing Cloud are is in the forefront and delivering these use cases and this vision today, and it's only going to get better from here. So it's pretty exciting when you start to capture what we've been talking about and look at what we have in front of us together. Hopefully, we piqued people's interest and curiosity today on the vision and journey of autonomous planning, and if that's the case, we have more information for you. You can use this QR code that you see on the left with a whole host of information from ketteQ and Salesforce, and examples and content that you might find really useful and inspiring. And if you want to engage in these kind of conversations and connect with us, the QR code on the right will give you a link to be able to initiate those calls, and would love to be able to hear your thoughts and your questions and ideas on this vision and journey, and hopefully get a chance to work with you on that.